Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about Python lambdas. So a lambda function is a small anonymous function, a very small function. You see, a lambda function can take any number of arguments but can only have one expression. So here's how you declare a lambda in Python. You need to have the keyword lambda, and then you put your arguments. Let's say we have arguments a and b, and here we have our expression. Maybe you can say a plus b. So this is the return value and these are our arguments. So let's remove this line. Let's make an example. Let's first use the normal function. Let's define a function and we call it multiply. So this function will take in as argument a and b, right? So what will this function do? It should return the product of a and b, so a times b. Done. So we can say x is equal to multiply, and we put in a, let's say 10 by 10. So the result of 10 by 10 should be 100, right? So now let's print x as and see if do we get the 100 we're expecting, because this function multiply return the product of a and b, and a and b are both 10. So 10 by 10 will be a 100. So there is 100. So now we need to replace this function, this whole thing, with a lambda. So as I said, a lambda. Let's say now let's make a lambda. So remember I said a lambda can have any number of arguments, right? But can only have one expression. So let's take x is equal to, we are making a lambda now. I said we need to have the keyword lambda, right? Let's take arguments a and b, right? So it's a comma separated, then b comma separated, as in any function that you will take more than one argument. Then after the argument put this, and we need to have our expression. So what does this function do? The multiply function, it returns a multiplied by b. So even in a lambda we say that a times b, because we said this lambda this lambda will replace this function. So x is equal to lambda, and these are our arguments, and this is the return value for this lambda function. So now we can just say print x. X is the name for our lambda function, and we need to give arguments to that lambda function. Let's again put 10 and 10. So this should print 100 also. Let's remove this and see if do we get what we are really expecting. Yes, here's our 100. You see, let's take back what we had. So we had a function, but now I want to replace it with a lambda, and we did here. So can you see what the difference between a general function and the lambda function? So we had the defined keyword and the name for the function, the arguments, the return keyword, and what the function should return. So in a lambda we can do that just in a single line. You see, yes, and this lambda function and this function does the same thing. So now why use lambda? Why use lambda instead of the general function? So now the power of lambda is better shown when you use them as an anonymous function inside another function. So you can use a lambda inside another function. Say you have a function definition that takes one argument, and that argument will be multiplied with an unknown number. So you can use a lambda within that function. Say you have a function. That function takes one argument, just a single argument, and that argument will be multiplied with an unknown number. Right. Let's make that example. So we have this function. Let's say, call it my function. So remember, said this function takes only one argument, call it a. So now this argument will be multiplied by an unknown number. Don't know what number will be multiplying our argument. So now we can use a lambda within this function. So should say return lambda. So now return lambda with, let's say, the number that will multiply a, an unknown number is n, right? And n will multiply our argument, which is now a, right? So now what do we do? Let's go down here. So how can we see this function takes one argument, right? But inside this function we introduced another variable, which is n. How will we put the second argument n when calling this function? How are we going to do that? Okay, let's see. You will see. Let's now have a variable that we'll call this function. Let's say x. I do love the variable x. X is equal to my function, and my function only requires a single argument. Let's give it that argument 2. Let's give the value 2, right? We did call this function, but what happens inside the my function? So this number 2 will need to be multiplied by this number n. But how do we get that number n in order to multiply this 2 with that number? Because this function only requires a single argument. Okay, not a problem. We can now say y is equal to, in order to put the second argument, we can say, now we call this one x, because x has now called this function. So x will now refer to what is inside this function holding the value of this argument a. So we now have given the value to this argument a, we given 2. So now x will now refer to this lambda expression, lambda function within this my function. So now we can say y is equal to x, and now we need to give the second variable, which is n. We can now give a value to that variable n. Let's say we give it the value 5. You see? So now the result of, if we were to say print y, what will y be? Y will now be this 2, which is the original argument from that function, 2 multiplied by 5. And what is that? It is 10, right? Let's run the code and see. Indeed, it is 10. You see? So we used a lambda within a function. So we first called this function and assigned one argument, but inside this function 2 variables were used, and none of them was a constant. They only need to come when the function is being called, and we did that, called using the function and this variable x, then used this lambda function. So that's why now we're calling x when assigning to y. That's why you're calling x, because x is now referring to this lambda function. My function was itself called by x. Now x is now referring to that lambda function is. So that's another way you you can use a lambda, simply as that. Or else you can use lambda functions when an anonymous function is required for a short period of time. So when you want to do something, just quick way of doing something. So, but I think this is the best example I can come up with when it comes to lambdas. So that's just it about lambdas. If there's anything you don't understand, or you think I need to make a video on just to give a clearer explanation on lambdas, please drop it in the comment. And thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.